in this episode of the Critical Oxygen Podcast.
Okay, well, that's still a form of GI distress. It's just not in the one where you're having a blowout through the mouth or someplace else, or having just that awful stomach feeling. If you're not absorbing the carbohydrate, you have energy lulls. That's still a form of gastric distress. Mm-hmm. But just because you have an iron stomach, you still might not be like absorbing all the nutrients that you're taking in.
Welcome to the Critical Oxygen Podcast, where we help you optimize your physiology and maximize your endurance potential. I'm your host, Phil Batterson. I have a PhD in molecular exercise physiology, and I'm the founder of Critical Oxygen, where my mission is to build better endurance athletes through remote education and in-person physiological testing. Have you ever struggled to execute on race day? Well, I definitely have. And there is nothing more frustrating than training for months, all to have your race day ruined by poor planning and execution. In this episode of the Critical Oxygen Podcast, Coach Aaron Geiser and I talk about the importance of having a plan for your next race day and how to prepare and execute on race day. Enjoy. Aaron Geiser, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Phil, how's it going today?
Good, man. Good. I've been having some pretty fun, successful workouts, actually. I don't know if I talked to you about this last time we spoke, but actually, no, I haven't, because I woke up on Monday morning, and I was like, you know what? Today seems like a good day to do a 5-minute all-out test and a 20-minute all-out test, back-to-back, in the true kind of Andy Coggan model of 20-minute FTP development. So I got my VO2 Master out. I put my 3 Moxie monitors on, made sure I fueled a little bit before the workout and everything like that, and crushed myself on the 5-minute all-out, but was able to manage like 357 watts or something like that. So I was really happy with that because I haven't been doing like any VO2 max work or anything.
Solid.
Yeah, and then my legs felt like absolute jello. So I stood up, walked around a little bit, felt like a baby giraffe, and then 10 minutes later, jumped back on the bike and did a 20-minute, like the 20-minute all-out test. And what the idea is that in order to get your 20-minute FTP to be, or your true FTP to be 95% of your 20-minute FTP, you're supposed to do the 5-minute test beforehand. So I wanted to just try it and see what happened, and it definitely showed. I was fatigued during the 20-minute all-out test, but I think 90. So I wound up, I think, getting 272 watts, which again, happy with. And 95% is that's around 250. And I'm like, yeah, I could probably maintain 250 for an extended period of time. Like that seems like it's more representative of my, say quote unquote FTP or 30 to 90 minute power that I could maintain. So it was a fun little experiment in torturing myself, but I think the results were good.
Well, it doesn't sound like fun, and kind of reiterates to everybody why I'm not a big fan of FTP tests. But I think what everybody should write in when they hear this episode, next time you do this, Phil, you need to video you walking like a giraffe, and then we need to place that within some of these videos. I guarantee numbers are gonna jump, and that would be fun. Yeah. Like, look at that guy looking like he just came out of the womb, just flopping around.
Well, that's what I sent. I sent Dave Shell the meme of like a baby giraffe trying to like get up and stuff. I was like, this is what I feel like right now, because I sold the farm, I would say, on the on that. So it was fun. Like, and when I say fun, I mean like type 2 fun. Like, looking back on it, I'm proud of the way that I was able to perform. But in the middle of it, you're just like, I want to do anything I can right now to just like not think about this or not have to do it. And it's interesting, the type of pain. A 5-minute all-out test, the pain is way different than a 20-minute all-out test, I would say, which is different than like a 60-minute, say like time trial or, something along those lines, which is probably different than an Ironman. So it was interesting to feel that 5 minute all out pain again.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say last week I had 25-minute repeats at race pace, and at a certain point, your brain just is like, all right, what can I focus on for the next 35 seconds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being inside, I have my headphones on and stuff like that. So it's generally one of those things where it's like I can switch the music or do other things like that. But were you riding outside for your race pace
No,
efforts?
this one was middle of the week, so I just walked downstairs.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's another thing that is very different about like some intervals is that if you're inside and you can have headphones on and music going, that always helps me because I can disconnect really nicely. Um, and then going outside, it's different.
Well, I guess we're you've seen
Mhm.
kind of the lay of the land around here. It's just for doing anything and trying to keep that power up, it becomes significantly challenging because you have these fairly large stretches of uphill and then you're going downhill, and it can help you kind of dial into really feeling consistency if you're trying to work on that. But typically where we're at, your normalized power is going to be quite a few watts higher than your average power, and it just kind of adds that additional just difficulty because you're searching for gearing a lot of the time on the downhills just because they're fairly
Yeah,
aggressive.
have you found that like are you able to maintain, kind of that like feeling of, hard effort when you have those like rolling, or I mean, like even in some cases, like a little bit kind of steep downhills, or do you just kind of accept the fact that, you're not going to be able to work as hard going down the hills as you are, kind of going up them?
I think it just depends on what hill
Yeah.
like you're heading down. I will say, and this is something that I've tried to find, is a 2 by 54, 55 tooth SRAM, which is what my current um, race tri bike on the Trek Speed concept is, and I can't find it. I have on my training bike and what was my old race setup, I have a 55 tooth Shimano, and it was a heck of a lot easier to find that higher
Mm.
power on descents because it was, I mean, there's just a little bit of a dinner plate in that case on the front chainring, and made it a lot easier to find tension within the chain. Right now, it's a little bit more like I'm finding a little bit more of a challenge with, I think SRAM has a 50 on this one, and it's just like they say that gearing, the revolutions are about the same, but there's times where it feels like on downhills, I'm chasing
Mm.
like tension within
Yeah,
the
that's
chain.
that's interesting, and maybe that's just like, you kind of it is what it is. Um, do you like do you find that when you start to train more outside, do you feel like you lose fitness a little bit because of that? Like, because I know, like, if you're training inside all the time, you have that constant, potentially constant, um, you know, pressure of being, say, in erg mode and other things like that. Um, yeah, how do you feel like you lose fitness when you start training outside more?
No, I feel like, because as we talked about it, it's a lot of hills. Like there's typically even a short day, I'll go out and snag 3,000 feet of elevation. On a big day, I'll get 6 to 9. So it just depends on. So there's some neuromuscular development that's going on within that's going to translate over to
Mhm.
basic cycling anyway. So when you get on flats, you do have more power because you're just kind of fatiguing the because I will slow down the cadence and work on some heavy gear work in that case. So in that case, burning out some of those normal muscle fibers, they're going and recruiting other muscle fibers within the same muscle group, and I'm starting to bring that over a little bit. So no, I don't think that because there's more uphill like challenge than downhill challenge, and you can always utilize that downhill more as a recovery, and the next thing you know you're going up another hill already. I feel like in time it's just the first couple of times I go outside, often with these hills there'll be stretches where I'll be 450 440 watts for a couple of minutes, and it's like, what the hell am I doing? Then when you start to dial into it, okay, I'm going to make it up this hill at 320 and then have a heck of a lot more on the back half of it. So I just think that with the exposure, you just get some specificity there and start to feel it and not just over crank it. Because I will say, when you've had this big block, maybe the winter, where you're sitting on a trainer, having that consistent power through erg mode, and then you're climbing up that first hill outdoors, you're like, whoa, what? That's not sustainable for very long. So I feel like if you still walk outside with a game plan, you're still going to increase fitness. It's a matter of having, okay, what am I going to, with this particular route that I'm choosing today, this is going to be the focus on these particular areas. These are going to be the focus on, so you might, like me, I might combine a couple of different targets within the ride, and knowing that route really well, I then implement that particular style of riding within that portion of the route and then move on. So I think that helps probably individuals that just go out. Initially, they have this big bang in fitness, and then over time, they probably, if they do not have that kind of perspective of, let me have some dedicated specific work here, I could totally see fitness levels decreasing because you're just kind of riding and you've gotten better. You had that progressive overload early, and then you're hitting that level off and you're not challenging yourself possibly, and that's when you're going to have a little bit of a slope in detraining.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that is probably, what happens to more people, as they transition from like out or inside, which is like very structured. You can get your workouts in, you can do your zone 2 stuff, you can do your volume builders, you can do your threshold work, you can do whatever you want, in a kind of a controlled manner. And then you go outside, and then you're like, running into stop signs and other things like that. And if you don't have that plan of, I'm going to hit, like this next hill I know is like 5-minute climb, I'm going to do, something that's like similar to like a VO2 max, style interval, then yeah, absolutely, you would probably start to, taper off in terms of your fitness and everything. It's not because you're riding outside, it's because of the discipline that you have when you're riding outside, as opposed to, the discipline that you have when you're riding indoors, in a sense.
Absolutely. And if you're running into stop signs, we need to work on bike handling before anything else. No, I was just messing with you.
Yes. You got me.
So you lobbed that one up. I really had to hit that one down.
Don't run into stop signs. They don't move. It probably hurt. Yeah. That's funny. But going along, like, that's actually a perfect segue into what we wanted to talk about today, which was this idea of, how do you need to approach your next Ironman race, half Ironman race, marathon, ultra marathon, to get the most out of all of that fitness that you have hopefully built, over the course of, the weeks to months that you've been training. And I think what it comes down to is having a plan, right? That's first and foremost. That is the number one thing that you need to do, is you need to go into a race with a plan. So Aaron, if you wouldn't mind just giving us kind of like an overview, and I'm sure this is like an it depends sort of manner, but how do you help coach your athletes to have a good plan going into their, next Ironman?
So, one, we need to have the nutrition plan dialed in. We need to start to shaping up when those times are going to be, when you're going to when you need to fuel, if you need to kind of assess and say, oh, I might be behind, I might need to get ahead at this point, we're looking at those. We're looking at kind of 8 weeks out, 10 weeks out, we have a pretty good idea of what the temperatures are expected to be. So we have already implemented a heat protocol if need be, and getting the athlete ready in that case. We don't want them to be surprised from that. So it's looking at a lot of the areas that are going to prevent that athlete from having a good day. And we do know heat's going to do it. If you don't have a good nutrition plan, those are going to do it. The training plan, which we've kind of talked about in a lot of different formats, I mean, that is going to have a little bit of a change based on the type of course that it is. If there's more climbing, we're going to do a little bit more strength work. If there's a little bit more flats, we need to spend time and consistency in aero. We also need to consistently put time into the pedals. It's not like you don't want to do a whole bunch of training in that case outdoors on a hilly course where you're driving up and then you're just spinning or not spinning on the way down, because you're going to be challenging yourself to pedal the entire distance if it's a flat course. There might be points where you take a moment, stand up, stretch out, but for the most part, you're going to be pedaling the entire time, and the more time that you spend in an aerodynamic position is going to be key, because you're going to be the fastest in that point. So really, we start to just, afterwards, 8-10 weeks, we have an idea of what that is. We're starting to implement that from the training plan. Then we're starting to mix in, okay, we need to start to dial in the nutrition. We need to start a heat protocol. Those start at that point and lead you into the taper. Come in the taper, I like to have conversations with my athletes of starting to look at the course. Okay, I've never raced this course. I've done recon on it. Here's what I want you to do when you get to the course, but here's what we're looking at on paper and from the recon that has been done. So going in, having an idea of what those athletes are going to see on that particular course or what they're going to experience, and preparing them to go out and see parts of that course, whether they're driving the bike course, running part of the run course, or driving part of the run course if they have that opportunity. Seeing also kind of the swim and taking a look at, okay, well, current looks like it's coming from here. The winds is coming from north to west. So you can start to plan on, okay, where is the challenge going to be on this particular day? And then when we get to that start line, that athlete's just a little bit more prepared from a race-ready standpoint.
Yeah, there's
a lot of different things probably on top of that too, but that's...
No, I was going to say, I think like from an overview perspective, that's really good, right? One of the things I always tell people is don't do anything new on race day, right? So go in, trust your training, because exactly like what you've said is you've already started within the training to build in workouts that are specific to both the distance of the race and the race course itself. So if you have, a course that's super hilly, you're probably going to build in, hilly workouts if you possibly can, or like you said, more strength work, with on the bike and other things like that. And during your training is also a great time to work on your nutritional strategies as well. And within those nutritional strategies, you're going to want to stick to not only the carbohydrate consumption that you're aiming for, but also the food that you've been practicing with. So if you practice with a certain type of gel or fuel, then race with that specific type of gel or fuel, right? And then once you practice your training towards what you expect the weather to be, if you can. I think that's the biggest thing that might be a little uncontrollable, is if you're racing in Kona or somewhere that's going to be really, really hot, and you live in more of a temperate climate that's not quite that way, then that can get challenging to actually try to simulate training, along those lines. But you can, if you know you're going to be training, if you know you're going to be racing in a hot environment, you can start to implement, your heat acclimation protocols, exactly like the one episode that we talked all about heat acclimation, right? You can do 3, 4, even more than that, plus weeks of heat acclimation to get your body ready for racing in a hot and humid environment. So,
and I think not to cut you off,
man.
I apologize, but I think the only that you can still simulate, you can still test that. I think the one that individuals have the biggest complication with is elevation, and often I push individuals that are going to go and race at elevation. I push that heat protocol and try to push it to a little bit more of an extreme. Have them doing more kind of indoor sessions where they do make it extremely uncomfortable. And by improving blood plasma, and some of those same effects have benefits at elevation, and this is probably the best way that we can somewhat emulate that without being able to send them and change their complete somehow sending them out to elevation to train. Like I've had people, what if I go and spend a week? And I'm like, I'd much rather you keep that money in your pocket, because a week is not going to be long enough for you to get actually any adaptations. Let's just throw a lot of heat at you and try to build from there. And I've had those conversations multiple times. I mean, it's looking, if you can't spend at least 21 days, it's not going to be a great benefit to do that. So I think, Phil, this is where, and yes, I get some people might not have that exposure to a sauna or something like that, but I have to believe that there's a lot of individuals with their pool membership that are going to be able to kind of take advantage of a sauna and still find a way to get some type of heat acclimation. But I would also, this is the one area where I think people have the most challenge of simulating it, and I would just recommend an athlete in that case to try to take the same heat protocol but dial it up just a little more extreme, not putting yourself in danger, of course, but a little bit more extreme, and that should at least provide you with some benefits when you get to elevation, to not have some of the challenges that you're gonna have at elevation.
And I would say too, the heat. So there's a lot of research now, or research is starting to investigate this more, but extended heat training protocols seem to, be able to not only enhance plasma volume, but to some extent hemoglobin mass as well. And the hemoglobin mass increase is really what you would be getting from, spending 21 plus days at elevation. But the challenge is that if you go to elevation and then you remove that stress, it goes away really, really quickly too, like on the order of a couple of weeks. So you would need to do something where you go to elevation, try to maintain your training volume and your training intensity for 21 days, and then pretty much race, within probably 2 weeks of coming back, so you don't lose.
10 is kind of that magic number, but you also don't want to do it under 5, because you are most likely going to have negative benefits if you race 1 to 5 days after you come down from elevation as well.
Right. So it just unless you're, unless you own a property out in Colorado where you could bounce back and forth and, live there for multiple, for a long time, it just doesn't make sense. And heat training is very accessible. You don't even have to have a sauna. There's studies that have shown that you can just wear a bunch of gear and ride indoors, and as long as your core body temperature gets hot enough for an hour 5 days a week, and it can even be moved down to 3 days a week, and you can still maintain these adaptations. But it's you just got to wear more clothes. This is like pretty classic. It's funny. It's like pretty classic, like wrestler mentality, sort of, just wear as many clothes as you can to try to sweat as much as you can. But we weren't trying to get heat adaptations at that point. We were just trying to lose weight. But in this case, you're actually going to be stimulating more of, those heat adaptations, which then could be potentially beneficial to racing at elevation. So those are things that I think need to be said. And it's funny, we were like, oh well, how do you best prepare for your next race? And we've now talked for the first half of this episode all about training, right? And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is during your training, that is how you are preparing for your race, bottom line. So you need to, as you get closer to your race, do things that are going to be specific to that race. If it's at elevation, you need to do something that is going to help increase those cardiovascular variables like we're talking about, plasma volume, hemoglobin. So whether that's elevation or heat training, you need to be practicing your nutritional interventions or your nutrition during race day as well. So again, training is a perfect place to practice that. And you should be doing things that are probably simulatory of your race day paces. So you got that. And then, knowing the course, I think, is a big one, because especially for actually just anything in general, knowing your course is going to give you an idea of maybe when you can dig a little deeper, because that there's going to be a long downhill that you can recover on, or maybe you need to go out a little bit more conservatively. For example, I did a 50K a little over a year ago now, and it was, I think, like a total of like 7,000 feet of elevation, and I met a bunch of people. I didn't do my recon. I had really no idea. I was just like, I'm just gonna go out, try to survive, and have fun, which may seem a little bit different.
No wonder we're having this talk today. It's
I'm telling you,
it's all coming
dude.
together.
I'm telling you, most of the conversations that I have on this podcast are because I've made these mistakes in the past. So it's so learn from my mistakes. Don't copy what I do. What is it? Do as I say, not as I do. So I've made that mistake of like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go out and a 50K race. It took me 7 hours, and I was running, and my heart rate was probably too high for the first 2 hours, and I suffered for the back half of that race. And it's funny because I actually met people within the race who were power hiking, all of the hills, and they were like, yeah, we power hike all the hills until the halfway point, and then we jog the rest of, then we run, pretty much the rest of the time. And I was like, and I came up to them because I was jogging, and then I was like, that's probably a good idea. So I actually, I said, okay, I'm going to power hike, but that was a quarter of the way through the race or whatever. And I think if I would have been power hiking the whole time, I probably would have been suffering a little bit less, towards the last third half of the race. But again,
so when did you
go ahead.
When did you apply this never try anything new on race day method?
I don't know if I have. No, so this is from a nutritional perspective. I absolutely didn't do anything new during that 50K race, which is really the last time I actually raced. So that was a big one, and it was my stomach actually generally felt pretty good. I did get to a point where
That's
I was
good.
like, I'm not really hungry, and the so trying to be within that vein of not trying anything new on race day, I was like, I'm just gonna keep sucking down this orange flavored, it was like a mixture of Gatorade and Morton or something like that, and it was too much. So I eventually went away from that because I knew that Coca-Cola wouldn't bother me, and it was the only thing that actually tasted good. But yeah, so I tried as long as I could not to go away from that, like nutrition plan, and I tried to maintain a heart rate that was commensurate with longer distance workouts that I had done leading up to the race as well. So it was a combination of both of those. Don't try anything new on race day, but at the same time, it's much easier said than done, especially when the fuel that you bring with you is not tasty anymore. You're like,
Yeah.
it gets really tough.
Well, and I asked that just to be a smartass, but I I don't. I typically race with a new pair of shoes every race. Like I've never put them on before, but they're similar to a pair that I've been using. It's just the first time I've laced them up, so it'd be the same type of shoe. It's just the first miles that shoe sees.
But you also
So I don't know.
switched to a lot of different shoes, so your feet are probably used to,
Oh, but there's still some shoes that will absolutely destroy my feet.
right.
So it's worked out, and especially when you're on a race course in triathlon and you race a hot course, you're just dumping all the ice, all the water that you can get at a certain time. So your feet are pretty saturated anyways, and sometimes there's just going to be that sliding that's going to start to take place, and you're going to create some friction over time doing that. But I was talking to an athlete, one of my athletes, and I was like, yeah, I race in a new pair of shoes every race. It's the first miles that shoes has gotten. He's like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, it's just what I do.
But I would say that, there are things that when you get to a race that you can't really control, right? Like you're not going to practice dumping a bunch of water on your shoes just to see if you are going to get blisters or not. Or at least I haven't. Maybe you have a different opinion on that, but it's things like that. But it wouldn't be one of those things where I go from wearing socks every single workout that I do to not wearing socks, say during a race, for example.
And that just sounds awful to me.
Yeah.
Not wearing socks, it's just
Go ahead.
time savings, yes, but even in the cycling shoes, to me, it's just like, no.
No, well, I mean, it's understandable, when you're doing like a sprint triathlon, something along those lines, and that the shoe isn't going to be, your limiting factor. But when you're doing something like an Ironman, take the extra 20 seconds, to switch your socks, because
some people don't. I don't make, like, if you don't, you don't. I would still, even on a sprint, would feel more comfortable putting a sock on.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah, and the point that I was going to make, though, is like taking the extra, 10 to 20 seconds to switch your socks is going to be a net positive if you wind up getting blisters on your feet and then have to walk, for minutes at a time because your feet are just totally trashed, right? So that's, that would be, obviously that's a very kind of like it depends on who you are and, if your feet, can handle it or not. But I would say like that's a type of situation where, not getting obsessed with like the shortest transition possible, especially if you are, say an age grouper who's just trying to finish an Ironman versus like if you're trying to win, then cutting that time might help. But again, I really think, like those little things, like switching your socks if you know that your feet are prone or susceptible to blisters, is worth the time investment, because if you've done everything else correctly, like, your hydration plan, your nutrition plan, you've practiced for the elevation of the ride, you didn't go in, cook yourself, during the bike portion. And, so if you've prepared yourself for all of these things through training and then, good race discipline, doing little things like that to minimize, like your transition times, I don't think is really worth the squeeze in a sense.
Boy, we really took a detour on this one.
We did about socks, but I think no, but I'll wrap it. I'll connect it back. It's we started by talking about having a plan for
Oh,
your
yeah.
races. So this is absolutely a contingency, right? Of are you going to wear socks during the run, and are you going to switch socks out during the run or not? So
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that was going to be part of our other conversation was bring your stuff. And
Yes.
these things would be part of that grabbing your stuff.
Yes.
I was more meaning that we spent more time on socks than I really thought we were going to.
Well,
That was my point.
there we spent like I think those like it's little things like that though that I do think are important, and these are the things that you should consider because I think people wind up tweaking like little things or forgetting socks or doing things like that then have a very negative outcome on the race. So that I guess that's kind of the point I'm trying to make is
So,
go ahead.
and you make a great point. And one thing that I would tell is you're going to get in these like groups of conversations. You're going to hear a lot of people. Don't listen to them. Because there's things that you're going to hear and you go, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that tomorrow. No, it's a terrible idea. Maybe you, hey, can you repeat that after the race?
Mm-hmm.
Don't like I've seen it too many times where people will be at like the Ironman Expo and they'll be like talking to one of the vendors or they'll be talking to a group of people. I'm gonna try that tomorrow. No.
Nope. You can try it after your race, and you can try it during a training session after your race, but don't switch it up.
Well, some people might be like, what age group are you in? Oh, yeah, you should definitely do that tomorrow.
No.
That is 100% a great idea, and you should 100% implement that idea tomorrow.
Well, that's like switching, like your tires or something like that for like from like say tubeless or from tube to tubeless tires or something like that, like the day before a race. Like I think you're just asking for a bigger potential for something to go wrong and then not having the tools and the know-how to be able to fix it by switching things up. So even if it does seem suboptimal, from the person you're talking to in the vendor village, at the expo before your race, even if it seems suboptimal to them, it's not suboptimal to you because you've trained or done something the same way for your, depending on how long you've been training for maybe years. Don't go and switch it up. You can switch it up during training because having a shitty training day, whatever. That's like you can bounce back from that the next day. Having a crappy race, like with what Aaron and I have talked about, yeah, you might only do 2 or 3 races a year. So like you don't want to play with that type of fire. You're flying too close to the sun in that sense.
And it's easy to get into that mindset. It's easy to get into that mindset even a week or two out.
Mm-hmm.
And we say this and we have said it kind of in a joking manner, but in all seriousness, we are as serious as you can say it. If you haven't given it what we are trying to do is control as many variables as we possibly can when we race. Mm-hmm. Anytime that as we talked about, weather, wind, these things, you don't have the variable. You don't have you don't have control over what other people are going to do, but you can kind of veer away or stay away from certain people, paying attention to but the things that you have control over, that's a variable you can remove and improve your percentage of a better race time. Mm-hmm. And that would be the key, is do things that you can repeat, that you will repeat on race day, you are going to control the variable by that much more, and that is going to make you more successful.
Mm-hmm. It's going to give you a higher potential to be more successful, because
Correct.
There's always things that, you know, like the things that you can't control on race day. There's always things that could potentially go wrong, but don't focus on those. Focus on, you know, like the tangibles and the things you can actually control. It's interesting. So back when you know, Matt Fraser was winning like 5 CrossFit games in a row, he actually would have the bed that he slept with every single day shipped to the CrossFit Games hotel, and he would set up his hotel room exactly like his bedroom in, you know, during training. And I'm not saying for people to ship a bed, you know, because that's just absolutely ridiculous. But
Well, you've already told people to ship their pillows, so
Yeah.
this would not be out of the realm of you telling people to do that. So I'm happy that you did put that little bit of asterisk on that to say you're not.
Yeah, you know, and this episode is brought to you by blah blah blah. The sleep. No, we're not. We don't have a sleep sponsor yet. But what I will say is,
Sleep 8. We're talking to you.
I was gonna use them as the example, but I never used them or anything. It's a free ad for them. But that's exactly my point. Is like, because he could afford it, and he, you know, just decided to send himself his bed every single year before the CrossFit Games, and that's probably something that did help, you know, him with better outcomes, because his sleep was just simply better. I don't know about you guys, I sleep absolutely awful at hotels, even in Airbnbs and stuff like that, because it's a new environment. You know, there's different, you know, noises, lights, other things like that. But
I raced in Roanoke, Virginia one year, and the pillow at this Holiday Inn, yes, I'm talking to you, Roanoke Holiday Inn, felt like it was lava rocks.
Ooh.
It was the hottest pillow I've ever placed my head on. I had like 4 hours of sleep, maybe.
yeah,
Awful.
that is so rough, and that is why on, you know, a previous episode I was like, the last thing I always pack before I go on any trips is my pillow. I just smash it in, you know, to my carry-on. If I can fit it, pillow's coming with me, because there's
Does it have a name?
No, there's no name to the pillow. It's just help Phil sleep better. Because that is something that I have made the connection that, you know, whether it's physical performance, mental performance, whatever it is, if I at least have my pillow with me, my blankie, my pillow with me,
Come on, Linus, or whatever it is.
I get much better sleep, and I'm much more functional. So that's me trying to control those variables, right? It's similar. Like I'm a very light sleeper as well. So I'll wear like an eye mask and then headphones with like white noise playing in them. And again, that helps drown out any, you know, like loud noises that could be waking me up. So those are ways that I control, you know, like my potential performance. And then it's a matter of executing on race day. So we've kind of talked.
And
We've
again,
jumped. Go ahead.
To share that, I like my noise, and my wife sleep in a room that has like really loud fans. So this is another free sponsorship there, but the app Bedtime Fan is something that I travel with, and then when we get to any place, when the lights go off, that thing turns on, and it makes the noise of a fan, and sleep a lot better.
Yeah. See, it's really, it's interesting too, because my fiance is like the opposite. She like doesn't like any noise.
Silence.
Actually, she's like okay with just like kind of random noises and other things like that. And I'm just like, nope. Like you, like a bomb could go off, you know, and I would still just be asleep, and I'd just be like, yep. The dogs could start barking. You know, like other things like that could start happening, and I'm just like, nope. I got to be functional tomorrow, so I'm just gonna lock everything down, and, you know, drown out as much noise and other potential disturbances as possible. Um, is there anything else, like, so we've talked kind of about, like how training is really going to set you up for success, from the perspective of being able to practice, your nutritional habits, training habits, simulation of races, other things like that. We've kind of gone into, making sure you drive the course to know and get familiar with the course and other things like that. We even talked about socks and bringing your pillows and other things like that. Is there anything that we've missed here that you emphasize, say, to your athletes, that we've, haven't discussed quite yet?
Well, that checklist of everything that you need. I mean, I know it sounds stupid, but your bike shoes, your wetsuit, your run, like your actual competition run shoes, like
Your
exactly all of these things, making a list and then sharing that with as many people as you possibly can before you actually start packing, I find to be a good backup plan, because I still have one athlete that comes to mind, and you've met him, and he will put together a list and not share it with anybody, and then there's 5 things on that list that were supposed to be there that weren't there. And so share that list with a number of people. Hey, is there anything that you see that I'm missing? And even though it's your bike's not on here, I just wanted to make sure that was being packed as well. Oh yeah, I got that one. But I feel like a list of everything that you're going to need. Nutrition, I mean, everything. Having that list and crossing it off.
Like to the point, to the point where it's like, I need 21
right,
gels.
exactly. Dumb stuff.
Pack 25 then. Like do other things like that, because there's nothing worse than getting there and being like, oh shit, I forgot a water bottle, I forgot this type of gel, I forgot whatever it is, and having to go and spend an extra 2 hours driving around a city you don't know, when you could just be relaxing to get the nutrition that you're trying to, get.
And a lot of specific and specialty nutrition is not in stores, limiting your capability of getting it quick. And then, hey, John, you coming to this race? Can you bring me our nutrition? Oh, no. So, yeah, that is something I would absolutely recommend as well.
Yeah, I love the checklist idea, because then you're going and sharing it with people. The checklist that you share with people is going to give you the best opportunity to not miss things, and it's not the end of the world if you do miss something, but from a nutrition standpoint, other things like that, when you have those specialty items, it's especially important, because I mean, there's this big controversy right now with a certain nutrition company where they don't put, like they don't have what is on the nutrition label. So if you are taking a certain product and then have to switch because you forgot to bring it or didn't bring enough to something that's on course, you don't know how that's going to interact with your body.
Are we not allowed to say their name?
That's where I think it's spring nutrition or something like that.
I think it's important for everybody to kind of hear that. So if they're, I had 1 or 2 athletes that utilized that in the past, and you got to take that off. So if I think it's important, public information right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's along the same veins of like, I don't normally like to just like, call companies out and other things like that, but I think in this case, because it was so egregious, the differences
wasn't even a quarter
like the
of the stated.
Yeah, exactly. It's like completely off. So if you are somebody who does use like the spring nutrition, I think is it
correct.
spring nutrition?
They're awesome
Yeah,
sauce.
if you
I think
use
is the
those,
one
be
that
very,
was,
very
like,
careful.
It was the primary one. I want to say it was awesome sauce.
Yeah, and so be very, very cautious with them going forward, because you're probably not taking in the amount of carbohydrates that you think you're taking in. And if you switched, say for example, right? Actually, this is a perfect example. If you were taking awesome sauce and for some reason you didn't bring enough, and they state that it's what would it be? Probably like 40 grams of carbs per packet, but they're only doing a quarter of that, and it's like 15 to 20. That and then you make up for that by taking like goos that are actually 40. Then you could be in an excess of about 20 grams of carbohydrates per gel packet, and you might be setting yourself up for some catastrophic gastrointestinal failure, and your race is not going to be fun. So I we'll put that as kind of like a PSA for people, and just highlighting why it's important not to switch up your nutrition on race day. And like I trust other nutrition companies, I think they're that are third party tested and other things like that, to actually have what they say are in their mixes. But at the same time, like I've also tried ones that have similar amounts of carbohydrates, and they make my stomach feel completely different because of I don't know, different ingredients, different ratios of like glucose to fructose and other things like that. So just be careful with the nutrition. If you've dialed something in, stick to it.
100%, because not everybody's that lucky.
Yep. Yeah. Not everybody's blessed with a super iron gut.
Well, and I've had conversations with athletes that say, "Oh, I have an iron stomach," but they still have, like, when I talk to them, you end up, okay, well, that's still a form of GI distress. It's just not in the one where you're having a blowout through the mouth or someplace else, or having just that awful stomach feeling. If you're not absorbing the carbohydrate, you have energy lulls. That's still a form of gastric distress. Mm-hmm. So I want to not to overanalyze your comment there, but just because you have an iron stomach, you still might not be like absorbing all the nutrients that you're taking in. So have that as, yes, I might be able to take everything, but it's also, do I have the energy level? Does it allow me, and you made this point earlier, does it allow me to continue to consume? Because also, if you hit a point where you don't want to consume your nutrition anymore, another reason, that is another form of GI distress. All of these things kind of play in, and I've said it here before, where an athlete will change their bike, their run shoes, their coach, like everything, but they won't change their nutrition because they might have that thought of, I have an iron stomach. Have you ever felt, oh, well, you end up getting into a conversation with that athlete, and like by the middle part of the run, man, I don't feel like I have any energy. I don't feel like taking anything else in. Like, okay, well, yeah, great. You have an iron stomach, but you're not absorbing the nutrition that you're taking in. So let's change that.
Yep, and that is something that should be explored during the
in
training
the specific
phase,
phase,
right? So we're right. We're yep, we're right back to it. So I think overall we bounced around to a lot of different topics here, but I think it starts with the training portion of things. Practice during your training what you are going to be doing during race day, and dial in things like nutrition, things like like your race strategies, other things like that during your training. Then when it comes to actually getting to the race, scouting the race, knowing the course, having a checklist that you share with multiple people to help double check and triple check all the things that you're bringing to the race course, and then just don't do anything new on race day. If you typically drink 1 cup of coffee before your race, don't drink 3 cups of coffee before your race. It's just little things like that I don't think people fully think about. Or is like, if you always run with fresh socks during your race, those sort of things. I think if there's anything that we missed out on, or if you have had success with in terms of getting yourself prepared to execute better for a race, please either comment down below, shoot us a DM. We'd love to share it with other people, just to help more people be successful, especially during like the ultras, the marathons, the Ironmans, the half Ironmans, those longer races where race execution really does play a lot into performance, and then feeling good throughout race day. Yeah, Aaron, you got anything else to leave them with?
we've been a fire hose of stuff, so we just spray it out there. If you have to listen to this multiple times, go for it. It's great information.
Yeah.
I would like to. The Tour de France 2024 starts tomorrow. I want to know who you're taking, and I'll share who I'm taking after that.
Well, I think people will be share will share this a little bit after the tour, but who's your?
Doesn't matter.
Oh, you want? Do you want me to
know yours?
You want to know,
Yeah.
dude? I have not followed professional cycling at all. My number one thing is as long as Tade is healthy, then he's probably going to be a contender again. But other than that, that's about as informed of a decision as I couldn't even tell you.
That's a shame.
I know.
I'm Tadej Pogacar. I'm taking for the overall win, and I'm somewhat excited to. Jonas had a crash earlier in the season, so he's not coming in 100%, and I'm somewhat hopeful that Wout van Aert will be able to. That guy's a fun watch, man, and I'm hoping
He's a beast too.
Yeah, he's incredible. So I'm hoping that he will have some of the restrictions released from him at certain points of this race to go out and really blow up. And I am excited that he might have that opportunity to go out and cause some big damage against some competition out there, because Jonas is not 100%. Maybe he might be out a little bit earlier than he had. Like, he's been a complete weapon, and he's not operating at full capacity. So I'm hoping that this will allow us to see some fireworks with that and his teammate. But the dude is a freaking machine, and he's fun to watch because no matter what, he can do it. He's a versatile cyclist who is an absolute machine.
Yeah, that's. I was actually just thinking about that today during my bike ride. Is there's going to be so much like fun sporting events coming up. Like right now, it's like the Olympic trials for the U.S. are going on, but then we have the Olympics, which is going to be awesome just to watch and just kind of have your jaw drop with how impressive these athletes are. And now that I'm like connected, to, like tertiarily connected to guys like Christian Blumenfeld and other people like that, I'm like, okay, I'm excited to watch this sort of stuff where like, some connections with like performance directors within like the tour and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm going to be watching all of like the NBC, I'm probably not going to watch every single stage of the tour, from start to finish, but I will definitely be watching all of the highlights and everything while I ride. And then I'm just going to feel sad about myself because they're maintaining 400 watts in the Peloton and I'm over here like dying at 180 because those guys are absolute animals. So it's going to be a lot of fun this summer to see all the different things, kind of come to fruition.
But yeah, I thought it'd be fun to throw that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, if you haven't watched, actually, yeah, I was gonna say if you haven't watched the tour, who do you got, or just who's your favorite, kind of like professional cyclist, professional triathlete, anything like that. Comment down below. If you have any questions, if you reach out to us with tips and stuff, you can always find me on Instagram at Critical02. You can find Aaron on Instagram at Try A Geiser. If you have any topics that you want us to talk about, please let us know, and we'll work that into our schedule. Hopefully everybody's staying healthy and having a fun summer of training and all that sort of stuff. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.